probably about that much. So obviously the Treasury needed to have that impediment removed. And I think that was the key thing about that whole thing, was that they got that removed so they could do the buying and selling that's been going on to try to keep the things propped up. So the recent reform, all it does is add more and more. It needs to be repealed, it needs to be stopped. Get government out of people's business.
Financial reform legislation, and what, if anything, would you change, Mr. Frazier?
You know, when it comes to financial regulatory reform, I think most folks in this room would agree we need sensible regulations. But what this financial bill did was double down on the same failed bureaucracy that allowed this financial crisis to happen in the first place. And folks, when this crisis took place, there were over 23 federal agencies that had some level of oversight over the financial system. 23 federal agencies that all failed the American taxpayer. Absolutely, we need financial regulatory reform, and I will stand up for that. But I will tell you that this bill did nothing, absolutely nothing, to address and reform two of the biggest challenges and problems we have right now. That's Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. These are legitimate issues that have to be addressed. We have provided over $145 billion in taxpayer subsidies to offset the cost of these organizations. It's unsustainable. And look, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not someone who's going to stand up for Wall Street. I'm going to stand up for people right here in the 7th Congressional District. I'm not someone who believes that the greedy corporate executives who help participate in this message needs a bailout. But unfortunately, contrary to Perlmutter, voted for the bailouts. You know, that's a big issue. And you know what was in those bailouts? Just for your consideration. In those bailouts, it included a loophole that would allow corporate executives to receive millions of dollars in tax-funded bonuses. So when someone gets up here and says they're going to stand up for you, yet they're voting for a bill that will allow corporate executives to have tax-funded bonuses, you have to ask yourself, do they represent you? Do they represent Nancy Pelosi? Thank you.
Well, I can tell you when George Bush, Secretary of the Treasury, and the Chairman of the Financial Reserve, the Federal Reserve, come to you and say, you know, this week, and to my friend Buck, Wachovia, Washington Mutual, AIG failed and Merrill Lynch was forced into a merger, but those other three failed in the week of September 18th. And then there's a run on money markets on that Thursday. And the other biggest banks in the country are ready to fail. And then we go into a complete shutdown of demand, whether it's people going out to restaurants or people buying cars. We needed to do something because Wall Street had run amok. And the Bush administration was not policing it. Ponzi schemes with Madoff across the board. So, you know, my friend Mr. Frazier may be right. There are a lot of agencies. Those agencies were not allowed to function. So what we've done in the financial regulatory bill, which absolutely had to take place, because erosions of safeguards on pensions, on all sorts of things, savings accounts, deposit accounts, had been eroded since the 30s. We did consumer protection to deal with credit cards, and everybody in this room has had some credit card horror story. We dealt with investor protection to deal with the Ponzi schemes that were being committed by unscrupulous individuals, and we set up a structure to break up the big banks or take them down if they were causing a risk to the financial system. So either they add capital, or they sell something, or we close them, so that we don't have this kind of an event, which has now caused the unemployment to rise. We can't allow it to happen again. And that's why I voted for that bill, and I support it and am proud of it.
Mr. Frazier, the next question is for you. We're going to try and calm it down a little bit. The question to you is, do you like Mr. Perlmutter's tie? All right, that's not our question. Our question is, if small business is going to help America get out of this economic downturn, what should Congress do to support small business?
This is our number one priority. We need folks in Congress who understand small business, who understand business in general, and how you create jobs. As I've traveled the district and talked to folks from Brighton to Lakewood to Aurora to Bennett to Arvada, folks have told me, business folks, entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, have said, you know, Ryan, I want to start a business. I want to grow. I want to add jobs. But, you know, I'm just so uncertain right now. New taxes, new regulations, healthcare mandates coming out of Congress. I feel like Congress and this administration doesn't like business. And I'm not going to invest under that environment. We need a new way forward that puts forth the types of policies that help small business power our community back to prosperity. Prosperity is possible. Allowing small businesses to deduct 20% of their income so they can invest those dollars to create jobs and acquire equipment. To tell the Federal Reserve to stop paying banks to not loan. Right now, the Federal Reserve, authorized under TARP, on which my opponent here voted for, is paying banks above market interest rates on loans. Why would you loan if you were being paid above market? Not to by the Federal Reserve. You want to free up credit? Get the Federal Reserve out of the way so we can access more credit. And we don't need more government to do that. We simply have to have Congress pull them out of the way. These are the types of solutions, in addition to ensuring that we don't increase taxes or regulations, that will give us an environment of economic certainty, that will allow businesses to create jobs. You know who you are. You're in the crowd right now. And I've talked to you, some of you, and you've told me, you said, I want to get back to work. I want to hire. Give me a Congress that embraces business, that embraces economic growth, that embraces prosperity, not more of the same. Thank you.
Same question, Mr. Perlmutter. Not about the tie.
Okay. Buck doesn't have a tie,
I know that.
so. No, this is a good question. It really does, putting people back to work really does revolve around small business. We've got to get small business back on its feet. And I represented small businesses for 25 years as part of my law practice. And this is where the real engine will come in. There are two other things we can do right now. One is to rebuild our manufacturing and not outsource or offshore jobs to other countries. We've got to build our manufacturing base. We need to build our infrastructure so that small businesses can thrive. But the way we're going to get small businesses back on their feet is to provide capital. Right now, banks aren't lending because regulators are very conservative and the bankers are very conservative. Mike Coffman and I, Republican Mike Coffman from the 6th Congressional District, and I put together a bill which became part of the small lending bill, which the Republicans in Congress are holding up right now because for whatever reason they don't want to pass this small lending bill, but it's a system that was used in the 80s. And Ryan and Buck may forget the 80s. The 80s were very tough in this state. We were at an 8% unemployment rate from about 1983 to 1987 in this state. What we used to help get out was to provide the banks with some breathing room, let them amortize some of their real estate losses so that they could work with their borrowers, with their customers, so they weren't calling in lines of credit, so they weren't calling in loans, so that their customers really could stay on their feet, work through this tough time, as all Coloradans do and as Americans do, get through the tough time and get to that light at the end of the tunnel. So there is an op-ed that the Denver Post ran just a few days ago that is from that amendment that Mike Coffman and I prepared. It was done with the help of the Colorado Bank Association. So that's the way you do it. Provide capital to small banks for small businesses.
Now, a man who doesn't wear a tie.
Well, we're talking about ties and stuff. I made a deal. I didn't even get married. I wouldn't even let my wife make me wear a tie to get married 8 years ago. So, While I was in the Navy, I had a uniform that had a tie, and I made a deal. That's the only time I'm ever going to wear a tie. No, I'll wear a tie sometimes. Anyway, does that count as my time? Small business. As I said, I retired in 2008. I would like to run a business. I'm currently self-employed. I got 0 employees. Need to get the government out of my way. I got lots of work. I'm not having trouble finding work. What I am having trouble figuring out is how do I get an employee to produce enough to pay all the mandated costs so that I can apply. And then how do I look that employee in the eye and tell him, you know what? I got $20 and you got to produce $20 worth of goods for me. I get to pay you 10. The other 10 goes to workers' comp, health insurance, whatever else it is. And you know what? When I talk to people who want to work, they say, you know what? I can take care of that myself. Give me the $20 and I'll get my own insurance. I'll take care of everything. We've had mandated health coverage in this country for quite some time, called workers' comp. Everybody's familiar with that? What's the biggest problem with workers' comp? People get hurt, they come down, they figure out how to shift from their personal insurance to workers' comp insurance. As I said, really I look at it, it goes back to the First Amendment, or the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10. Each of us should be able to contract for our employment and anything else we need. And that includes saying, you know what, give me the whole $20, I'll take care of all of the costs associated with me working for you. Thanks.